Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to the third video in this series of videos making sense of ME, chronic fatigue, and fibromyalgia. So in the first video we talked a little bit about my background, the story behind the Optimal Health Clinic, and I also introduced you to the integral approach that we use here at the clinic. In the second video we talked about the 3 stages of recovery and why understanding those stages is particularly important to have a sense of which kinds of interventions are going to be appropriate at which times. So in this video I wanted to talk to you about the 7 subtypes, and this is a model that we developed at the clinic about 5 or 6 years ago, which has become a kind of core piece, as it were, of how we look at each case and we work out what's going to be the most effective ways to work with them. So we've talked about this model in a number of different places, and hopefully by now you will have received in the post your free information pack, and in that pack is a report called ME in the 21st Century. And that's a great place to go to get more of a sense of this model. And there'll be a download of that underneath this video, so if you haven't got that to hand, then you can pull that up and have a look at that. And also underneath this video, there's a link to some interviews that I and some of the team did on Conscious TV. And on there, there's more detail about some of these subgroups as well. But to put it very simply, on the psychology side, we see 4 subtypes: the achiever, the helper, the anxiety, and the trauma. And in each of these subtypes, and by the way, we can have all of these or some of these, but each of these subtypes, they kind of act like predisposing factors, which if we have enough of these happening at once, this almost becomes like the tipping point which causes someone to become ill. Some people actually have a specific trigger as well, like they have some kind of virus or big life event which pushes them over the edge. And some people, they have a gradual onset where it's just an increase in the activity, as it were, of these subtypes. But on the psychology side, the achiever subtype is where we're constantly trying to do more and be more in a way where we're constantly living beyond our physical capacities. The helper subtype is where we're constantly putting other people's needs above our own. So we're constantly trying to help other people and not taking care of ourselves. The anxiety subtype is where we constantly have lots of ongoing anxiety and worry and fear in our life, again in a way which is overstimulating to our system. The trauma subtype is where we may have had significant traumas, like we've been in a war zone or we've been abused in some way, or it may be more insignificant traumas, what we call developmental trauma, where we just had a number of quite difficult life experiences that we never really processed, we never really worked through, and so that becomes a load on our system. On the physical side of the subtypes, we have the immune subtype. This is where we've had ongoing issues with our immune system, with sensitivities, with those kinds of things. We have the detox subtype, and that's where we've had ongoing issues around toxicity and those kinds of things there. We have the structural subtype, and that's where we've got physical, mechanical things that are happening somehow, somewhere in our body. And again, the build-up of these things over time, again, is what starts to lead to this kind of critical point where our body no longer can function in a normal, healthy way. And in a sense, it becomes a state of burnout in our system. Now, understanding these subtypes is, apart from being interesting, and apart from also being useful in understanding why we got ill in the first place, it's also important, obviously, to address those in supporting our recovery as well. Because if we support someone in getting well, but we don't deal with these underlying predisposing factors, that's also where people can relapse. Because you can kind of patch things up, get things back on track, but we need to deal with the causal underlying factors as well. And so that's also why these become particularly important. So as I say, you can read a lot more about these. You can also view more videos about them. But hopefully this gives you more of an understanding, as it were, of why it may be the case that certain things that you've tried have addressed some of these, but not the whole picture. And as I've kind of said in previous videos, that's very much what our approach is about. It's about understanding as wide a picture as possible to work out specifically what's going to be appropriate at what point, in what way, at what time. So in the next video, I want to talk to you a bit more about some of the psychology work that we do. You know, the chances are that you may well have had experiences of people saying things like, oh, you're just making it up and it's all in your head. And I certainly know that on my journey to recovery, I was pretty skeptical about anything that was psychology based. But hopefully some of the ways that I've introduced these ideas so far, like for example in the stages and the subtypes, gives you a bit more of an understanding of this. But I want to more specifically talk about why dealing with what we call the maladaptive stress response is such a key ingredient in supporting recovery. So I look forward to talking with you in that video in a couple of days' time.